Well, good afternoon, and thank you for the warm welcome. I am very curious as to how long it will last if people stand up before I speak, but I'm going to enjoy the newness while I can. But I'm so glad to be here and so grateful to have Carol introduce me. We are church members, and it's so nice to see so many familiar faces. I see another church member here, and also Patrice and I were neighbors for a very, very long time. And whenever I'm in this room, I think about my parents because they met at the Royal Peacock, which, as you know, is a couple of blocks away. And my mother says that there used to be after parties at the city auditorium. So my dad performed at the Royal Peacock. His name was Major Lance. And then they met at an after party, and the rest is history. So I stand here today, a true child of Atlanta. But this has been a very interesting 2 weeks, and I was reflecting today that it's hard enough when you take on a new job, but then you layer on that you are doing it very publicly. So everything that I do that's a really big deal, like standing here today, is done publicly, and that adds on an extra layer. And even as I navigate City Hall, and I was a member of the Atlanta City Council for 8 years, I quickly realized that being on City Council gives you an opportunity to be a Monday morning quarterback, quite literally. But it's a very different job when you are mayor. So thank you very much for your support, and I appreciate your input and your guidance as we navigate the next 4 years. This 2 weeks has been so very interesting for so many reasons. When you think about it in the context of a presidential transition, you think about a president comes into office in November and then they have about 60 days to transition. Well, this is a little different because we obviously had a runoff election in early December, and then about 2 days after the election, someone mentioned to me that it was my responsibility to plan an inauguration. So I likened it to a shotgun wedding, and I really just wanted to elope by the time we got into the planning process. But thankfully, we were able to pull that off as well, and then just when I thought we were catching our breath, there was this big national championship game played in Atlanta, and as if that were not enough, Donald Trump decided to come pay us a visit. But we're still here, and we are still moving forward, and hopefully we will continue with the threat of weather coming through, that we will continue to have some nice wins, and we can put a nice big fat check next to that as well. This morning was a great morning, following a tremendous weekend, having the opportunity to participate in the King Day services and also to participate in the Salute to Greatness awards on Saturday night. And it was so fitting that this would all happen at the beginning of my term because it really helps crystallize where we are as a city and what we talked about as we have transitioned from the campaign until today, and that's us being one Atlanta. And if you all have read the papers or seen any news coverage lately, you may have seen that I have assembled a team of 38 very accomplished people representing different sectors across Atlanta to help navigate this transition. My transition co-chairs are Larry Gellerstedt of Cousins Properties and Vicki Palmer, who used to be the CFO for Coca-Cola Enterprises. We had our first full meeting this morning, and I am so honored that we made 38 calls. We got 38 yeses, and I think with the exception of 2 people who were traveling, they all showed up this morning. And what I loved about this morning's meeting, included in our transition team, were Killer Mike and T.I. And so for all of the accomplished people that we have who've agreed to participate with this transition process, Killer Mike and T.I. have stolen the show. And all of the social media coverage has been about their participation. But it was so great this morning to see them fully engage with so many of our corporate and civic leaders and really talking about the issues that are facing our city and how we will navigate those issues. What I shared this morning during our transition meeting, there are some immediate searches that I know we need to begin in the city of Atlanta. We know that there's been a lot of discussion about procurement, about where we are with ethics and transparency in the city. And so I'm looking forward to doing a national search for a procurement officer. Also, there will be a search underway for a new head of our airport, and really getting feedback on what our best practices should be so that we can restore confidence in what's happening inside of City Hall. I know it's become very clear to me very quickly that there is a very important work that goes on inside of City Hall, but for us to really be able to go out and sell it on behalf of our communities and implement that work, we know that there has to be confidence in how we are operating as a city. So I look forward to sharing more with you on that, and also getting just more information on best practices across the country to strengthen where we are with ethics and procurement. We also are very happy that today during this afternoon's City Council meeting, which will begin at 1 o'clock, my administration will be introducing a paper that will begin the process of turning over the remaining deeds to APS. This has been I've been so very fortunate to have had some very good conversations with the superintendent, and where we are in pressing reset on our relationship with APS. I talked a lot during the campaign about education and the importance of education and our partnership with APS. And I know that there are things big and small that we need to address, but certainly we need to move on from this issue regarding the property deeds, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with APS so that once we move past this, that we can really get into some meaningful programming and input that will truly make a difference in our communities. Something that came out this morning during our transition conversation was the topic of early childhood education and the role that the city needs to play in that space, but also something that I heard repeatedly as I was out on the campaign trail was this need for active engagement from the city as it relates to vocational training and our apprenticeship programs. And I also look forward to, I see the First Lady from Clark Atlanta University is here. I'm looking forward to addressing some of the other issues that we have around our education partners, including where we are with land related to Morris Brown and Clark Atlanta University, and also making sure that our partners in the AU Center are really solid partners in the work that we're doing. You will be very happy to hear that this morning, Killer Mike, he reminded us that his mother named him Michael, but Killer Mike really brought top of mind for the group this morning on how we are very actively recruiting and working to keep students from Georgia Tech and other universities in the city of Atlanta, but we don't have that same engagement with the Atlanta University Center. So I want you to know that we continue to be committed to making sure that you're good partners in the affordable housing space, and I look forward to addressing some of the issues that we've had from the city perspective so we can move on and press reset on that relationship as well. Also, as we are talking about growing our city, and we are talking about smart growth within our city, we know that there is a lot of prosperity that's happening across Atlanta. We see it as we sit here. And this really is an example of how the city is expanding and bustling. But we also know that there are some other issues facing our city, how this prosperity is impacting communities outside of downtown and midtown, and making sure that we are being very smart and very thoughtful in how we expand as a city, and making sure that we continue to not leave our communities behind. A conversation that I know many of you all are interested in surrounds public safety. Obviously, that's a top of mind issue for anyone who comes into the city of Atlanta, and how safe we are as a city. We will continue to work with the Police Foundation and our community partners to make sure that we are strengthening our police force. There is an ideal number of police officers that we have in the city of Atlanta. We talk a lot about 2,000 police officers. The reality is the ideal number is 2,500 police officers. But there's also an opportunity for us to expand technology so that we have camera integration throughout the city of Atlanta. We will continue to focus on that. But also it's imperative that as we attract officers and we have this conversation on public safety in the city of Atlanta, that we're making sure that we attract officers who care, who truly care about all of our communities and the diversity in our communities. Officers who care about being engaged in our communities in a very meaningful way. You know that there's been great success with the At Promise Youth Center over in Vine City. I look forward to working with our partners to see how we can expand that model throughout the city, because what it means is that our police officers and our public safety personnel aren't just engaging on the back end of public safety. They aren't just reacting to crime, but they are proactively working within our communities and making sure that there's a front-end relationship and line of communication with our communities, which again is why I'm very excited about Killer Mike and T.I. being involved with our transition team. Certainly, I am very honored to have the leadership of so many corporate members and so many civic leaders, but as I shared with someone earlier today, if you think about Killer Mike, for example, he owns a string of barbershops throughout Atlanta. What better information do you get than from the barbershop chair on what's concerning the community, how people feel about the job that you're doing, and what they think that you should be doing differently. So I'm sure that you all have your hair salon and barbershop moments, and I look forward to the feedback that you'll bring back from your barbershop too. And I was sharing with someone, it's really interesting, I think that's an experience that everybody desires to have. I have 4 children, and I found that it's more convenient for me to bring someone to the house to cut their hair all at once. And my 15-year-old is very clear that he wants to go sit in the barbershop, whether it's 2 hours or 3 hours. I don't know what information he gets from the barbershop, but that's where he prefers to go. Also on yesterday, I had a wonderful meeting with Secretary Ben Carson on where we are as it relates to affordability and where we are in addressing our issues of affordability in the city of Atlanta. He relayed that he's been very pleased with a lot of the work that we are doing, especially the success that we are having with our public and private partnerships in the city. And really the model that he is interested in expanding is one that I've talked about a lot for the last year, and that is this public-private partnership model, but also making sure that we are infusing the necessary services in our community so that we are breaking the cycles that lead people to needing assistance as it relates to affordability. That means job training, that means public health information, that means providing support services in the education space. So I look forward to sharing more with you on that. I spent 3 days, I believe, last week over at the state capitol, meeting with our leadership, Democrat and Republican leadership, on some of the issues that are now facing the city of Atlanta, pressing issues. Certainly there's a conversation about where we are with the airport and that governing model, where we are with transportation and MARTA, and also something that will come up hopefully and that will pass without issue is where we are with our municipal option sales tax legislation. It's back up for renewal in 2020. But we need to get approval from the legislature as soon as we possibly can, because it helps with our infrastructure in the city of Atlanta and also helps keep our water rates low. Not the lowest. We know that they're still high, but lower than they necessarily would be. And I was also very encouraged in talking with representatives over at the state that they've been very pleased in how we've been good stewards of those dollars in the programming that we have as it relates to where we are with our water system. So it is a pleasure to be here, and I know that there will be many, many more opportunities to share with you where we are as a city and where we hope to go. But I am just very proud to stand here and say that we are off to a very good start. And I look forward to your feedback and your input as we navigate over the next 4 years to make sure that the issues that are of concern to your respective neighborhoods and communities are also top of mind for the city of Atlanta. Thank you for having me this afternoon.